Today's daf is daf mem vav, and we're going to begin with itmar, which is 3 lines down from the top of the Omar Ketanosh and Iskacha Shalol Ladas Aviyah. So now we're talking about a case where she, a Ketana, accepted Kiddushin from a Mekadesh without notifying her father. Omar Rav, bein he ubein Aviyah Yecholim li Akev. The Chiddush of Rav is that not only could the father decide that he doesn't want this marriage because the Torah was mezakim in the rights to marry off his ketana, but even she herself could be mevatel the Kiddushin before the father finds out about it. And even though later on he might find out about it and be misratzeh, it's not going to be valid. You're going to need a brand new Kiddushin because she has the ability to be mevatel that Kiddushin. However, Avasi Omar, Aviyav Lohi, and this is intuitive. Rav Asi says that only the father could be ma'akev and be mavatal the Kiddushin. Torah gave him the schus. He's the das makna. He can marry off his daughter, who's a ketana. She has no schuyos here. Esvei Rav Huna l'Rav Asi. So Rav Huna raises the following objection to Ravasi. The Amila, others say, was Chia Barav, who asked this question to Ravasi, based on a brayso. The Torah says in the Parsha Mafata, in Parshas Mishpatim, that if a man is Mafata a Besula, then two things happen. Number one, he has to pay a fine, a knas of 50 shekel, Kimor Absulos, and number two, he has to marry her if there's no objection to his doing so. However, the Torah says that im ma'en yima'en aviyah l'sesa lo kesav yishkol kamar absulos. If the father objects to the marriage between the mafata and the mafuta, his daughter, then the entire marriage is out, and he just simply pays the knas, the mor absulos, kesav yishkol. So the father clearly has the rights to veto the marriage between the mafata and the mafuta. And then the mafata will have to pay the knas. So the brisa is meduyak. It says, Ein li elo aviyah, hi atzmo minayin. How can you possibly tell us that anyone besides the Av has the rights to be Mavatel? Well, maybe she also, the daughter, has a right to say, I don't want to marry this guy. Minayin, how do we know that in fact she does have such a right? Talmud Lomer in a double language, Mikol Makam, teaching me that even the Bas could be Mamayan. Now let's assume, which is the Gemara's assumption here, in Rav Huna's kasha, that the mafata had in mind l'shem ishus, even though intuitively that's not how you read the parsha, but that's how the Gemara assumes, and we may get to see why. So he wanted to be mekadesh with bia, which is one of the 3 ways you can be mekadesh and isha, and the Torah teaches us that if either the father or the bas are mima'anim and they refuse and they reject this Kiddushin, then the Kiddushin are batel, even though he had a bia with her and that bia was the same Kiddushin. And this is a kasha and a stira to Ravasi, because Ravasi said only the father has the rights to object to the marriage. Amalu Rav responds to Rav Huna's objection, Lo tezel basar ibcha. Don't ask me a kasha that has no meaning to it. Because Rav Asi, Yochel l'shnuye l'chu, he could give you a simple answer. Could go shepito shalol l'shem ishus. Right? He seduced this woman for the purpose of znus. He didn't have in mind issues. And therefore, there's no Kiddushin here. And if there's no Kiddushin, then the bas, no less than her father, could be ma'akev because there was no Kiddushin. But enochinami, if she would have accepted Kiddushin, then she would not be able to be me'akev. But that's not the case of mafata. Mafata is shalol l'shem ishus. The Gemara doesn't understand Rav's answer. How can it possibly be that the pasuk in mafata is talking about mafata l'shem znus? Pita shalol l'shem ishus kra boy. Did the Torah have to go out of its way to teach us that in this case, the Be'ila was not L'Shem Kiddushin, and the father and the bas could decide they don't want to marry her. In Moin Yemoin. What do we need in Moin Yemoin for? There was never a Bilas Kiddushin to begin with. There was never Kavanah L'Shem Ishus. And therefore, the Gemara is now pushing the point that in the parsha of Mafata, there was a Biel L'Shem Kiddushin. And that's why the Torah has to be machadish to me who has rights to be mamayin and cancel that Kiddushin. And the Gemara answers, Omer of Nachman bar Yitzchak, the Torah did not come to teach me that through Miyun, this bas is allowed to get married to anyone else. There was no Kiddushin, so I don't need the Torah to tell me that. But Lomar, but what is the Torah coming to tell us here in this parsha of Miyun? Shemeshalim knas kimefuta. That the mafata has to pay the knas, and he's chayav to pay the knas in a case of a futa when the father's mamayin and he doesn't want to marry her off. So there are two options. If the marriage is going to go through, then he doesn't have to pay the knas, and they're happily married forever and ever. But if the father nixes and vetoes the marriage, then he has to pay the knas. That's the chiddush of the Mishnah. Of the Torah. The Torah is just saying that if the father's mamayin, you should know the mafata is going to have to pay the knas of 50 shekel. But now the Gemara is going to quote Rav Yosef, who's going to prove conclusively that this pasuk is talking about a mafuta shalol l'shem ishus, or rather l'shem znus. Amalei Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef says to Rav Nachman, Ihachi, if you're correct, and we're talking about a case of a mafata l'shem ishus, is an hainu de tanina. We can now understand what it says in the Brisa. More in the pasuk of mafata, it says more yimered lo isha. And what does that teach us? Hetzricha heimenu kiddushin. That there's a need for another kiddushin. Says Rav Yosef, I'm going to prove from this brisa, im pita l'shom ishus kiddushin lamali. Why couldn't the original ma'aseh bia of the pitui, which was implemented for the purpose of ishus as kiddushin, be sufficient? Why is there need for another kiddushin? As it says here in the brisa, shetzricha heimenu kiddushin. We have no choice but to understand that this pitui was l'shem znus. There was never kiddushin, and therefore the Brisa insists that she needs a new kiddushin. And if you'll ask me what's the chiddush of the Torah in Moin Yemoin, if at the end of the day the pitui was shalol l'shem ishus, the answer to that question is to teach you that therefore the mafat has to pay the knas when the father is mamayin. Abai says to Rav Yosef, and now we can reject the raya of Rav Yosef. Don't bring a raya from this brisa, because it's possible that even if there was a pitui l'shem ishus, she still needs another kiddushin. Why is that? And the answer is because tzricha kiddushin l'das aviyah. She's still a ketana, and although she had bia with this consenting adult who had in mind marriage, but nevertheless she's only ketana, and the Torah was mazaka the father to marry her off, and therefore the Brisa insists that she needs kiddushin acherim l'das aviyah. And now we're up to the Mishnah here on Daf Mem Vav. This Mishnah is going to deal with the case of a man who's Mekadesh Shalom, by giving a machal, which is hopefully going to be Shavah Fruta, but he gives many, many different nesinos. Ha'omer lish is Kachi li b'tamar zu, is Kachi li b'zu, and now we want to know whether we integrate both tamras into one Maaseh Kiddushin. And the halacha is that im yesh by achas mehem shava pruta mekudeshes, v'im lav eina mekudeshes. In other words, since he said iskachi twice, and this is the sheet of Rav Shimon, as we'll see in the Gemara, then iskachi separates and splits the Maaseh Kiddushin into two, and therefore you need a shava pruta for each Maaseh Kiddushin. Or at least you need one shava pruta for one of the two Maaseh Kiddushin, and one tamra has to be worth a pruta, because we pass like Beis Hill in the first Mishnah, in Masechet Kiddushin, that with less than a shava pruta, there's no Kiddushin. However, the Mishnah continues, what happens if he didn't use the word iskachi over and over again, but rather he said bazu, bazu? All we do is integrate all the different tamros, and if the whole bundle all together, which he gave one by one, is worth a shava pruta, then she's mekudeshes. If on the other hand, even after we add all the tamros, we still don't add up to a pruta, then she's not mekudeshes. Now we have the Seifa of the Mishnah, and it's not clear, there's going to be a whole sugi about this, where the Seifa is going on. Is it going on the Reisha? Is it going on the last case? She's eating each tamra immediately as she receives it. Eina mekudeshes. Why? Because even if we'll say, like we said in the last case, in the first case, in the last case, where he left out his kachi, and therefore we're going to integrate all the tamras into one Maaseh Kiddushin. But that's only if they're all extant at the same time. If she ate them piecemeal, then it's not enough that the one she ate is a half a pruta and the one that she received afterwards is a half a pruta and it's all told a pruta. Ad shevi achas men shava pruta, then she needs one tamra that's worth a pruta. Frek the Gemara, my timer, Mantana is kachi. Which Tana is the one who holds that because he repeated the word is kachi, therefore he set up many Maaseh Kiddushins, and therefore you have to have a shava pruta in one of the various tamras of Rabbi Shimoni. He has many tovim in a pikadon, and he takes a shvua on to deflect and reject each tviyah. And the question is, how many karbonos does he have to bring as a karban hasham gzelos? If he said shvua shem lecha, and then he said shvua shem lecha, etc., says Rav Shimon, since he used the word shvua over and over and over again, it's a separate shvua. Each one of the various shvuas is independent of the other, and therefore he'll bring multiple karbonos. But if he left out the word shvua, and he just said without repeating the word shvua, then he brings one karban shvua for one shvua. That was a false shvua. Okay, now we go on to the Mishnah. The Mishnah says bazu, 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 in yesh bekulim shava pruta, and then it says hareit mekudeshes. However, that means that when mitzareh, if we integrate all the tamarim into one Maaseh Kiddushin, and if the sum total of all these tamras is worth one pruta, then she's mekudeshes, because he did not repeat the word mekudeshes. However, what happens if she ate the first one before she got the second one, etc., etc.? So then there's no Kiddushin unless there's one left that was worth a pruta. So you can't integrate them together if they don't exist. And if she ate them one by one, they don't exist. Hey, on which part of the Mishnah is this last Seifa interpreting? That if she ate the first one before she got the second one, she's not mekudeshes unless one of the tamras is worth a pruta. Ilema Reisha, if it's going back to the dinner Reisha is kachi, my iriochelas. What are you telling me that you have to find one tamra that's worth a pruta because she ate the previous tamra? Afilu nachas manachas nami. Even if they're all on the table, he separated each Masechet Kiddushin as a separate independent entity, and therefore there's got to be a Shavapruta in one of the Tamras. So don't tell me that because she ate one of the Tamras, therefore we need to find one single Tamra that's worth a Pruta. Ela Seifa, we have no choice but to assume that the Seifa of the Seifa in our Mishnah is going back as a comment on the Seifa. And now we're talking about a case where he's Mekadesh with many, many Tamras that are integrated to form the Shir and create the Shir of the Shavapruta, because there was no Iskachi in between. And therefore the Mishnah says that she's not Mekudeshes unless in front of her all the Tamras are there. And we can integrate them to form a Shavapruta as one Masechet Kiddushin. But if she ate the Rishonos before you can mitzaref them to the Acharonos, there's no possibility of tziruf. You can't integrate, and she's not Mekudesh unless there's one Pruta that she has, there's one Tamra that she hasn't eaten yet, that's worth a Shavapruta. Frek the Gemara, I don't understand. Vafilu b'kamaisa. Let me just take a minute to close the door. I left it open for the sukkah guy. Rafilu bekamaisa for milvi. The Gemara says the following. Let's say that there's one Tamra that's worth a Pruta. And perhaps that Tamra is one of the Rishonos, which she ate already. And now we're saying she's Mekudeshes? Because again, keep in mind, the Mishnah says even though she ate it, that doesn't invalidate the Kiddushin if the one she ate is worth a Pruta. Since the Kiddushin is not going to be valid in the case where we left out his kachi, but rather said bazu, until after we integrate all the Tamras. So when the moment she ate one of the Tamras, that's like a milva. She has to pay for that Tamra. And now he's going to say to her, okay, you don't have to pay for the Tamra. That's called mechilas milva. But we are very established, and the Gemara is going to pick it up later on in Daf Mem Zayin, that a mekadesh b'milva ain't a mekudeshes. On Rabbi Yochanan comments on our mission with a mashal. He says, you gave me a table, you gave me meat, you gave me a knife to cut the meat, but I don't have a mouth to eat with. Meaning, the Nimshal, I have a Mishnah in front of me. I don't know how to interpret the Mishnah. So the Gemara now quotes a machlokes amoraim as to how to interpret our Mishnah. Rav Shmuel Amicham Faili Olamar Reisha. That the last piece of the Mishnah is going back on the Reisha. And that if she ate from the Tamras before the Gemara Kiddushin and the last Tamra, then that comment that the Kiddushin is not valid in that case where she ate the first Tamras, that's relating to the Reisha. The Reisha is talking about a case of Iskachi. Follow me, boy, Kama. This is what the Mishnah has in mind. Follow me, boy, I don't have to tell you a Chiddush in the case of Manachas, where she did not eat the Tamra, and they're all sitting there on the table, the Ikapruta in Ilolo, that the Kiddushin could only be Chal if the total value of all these Tamros is a Shavapruta minimum. That I know. I know that from the first Mishnah. We pascal like Beit Sil. V'lo cheles. Here's where I need a Chiddush. What's the Havamina that Ocheles would be a valid Kiddushin? Says the Gemara. She received the first Tamra and she ate it before she got the second Tamra. I would have said that maybe she is Mekudeshes. Why? She received Hanoah from the Tamra immediately upon receiving it, immediately after the Nesina. And therefore she has revealed her intention and her will to marry this fellow. Ema Gabru Nafsha. Maybe when Beis Hillel say that you cannot be Makadosh an Isha with less than Shav proof, that's because of our assumption the woman would not want to give up her marriage, get into a marriage based on a half a proof. But only if she indicates that she's happy and she wants the marriage, then maybe you don't even need a pruta. Kamash Malon, the Mishnah says, no, the Kiddushin is not valid. She's got to receive no less than a shofar. That is Rav and Shmuel. Now we get to Rav Asi. Rav Asi is going to disagree. Rav Asi Yomar Liolam Sefer. We're going back to the case of the Sefer, which he didn't say his kachi. He didn't say his kachi, but bazu. And we integrate them all to one. What did the Mishnah mean when it said that if there's one of them that's worth a shava pruta, she's mekudeshes? I mean, we were very surprised about that. It means even if she eats the first tamra and it's worth a pruta, she's mekudeshes. I mean, it's a milva. She has to pay him back for that tamra. Because it only becomes hers after the Gemara Masechet Kiddushin. We're talking about zu. Let's reinterpret the Mishnah. When it says, quote, and we thought it means even the first one, but that's a milva. What the Mishnah had in mind is the last Tamra of all the Tamras that he gave him. And if the Rishonos had a Shava Pruta, she's not Mekudeshes because she ate it before the Gemara Kiddushin, and that becomes Halva, Ein Isha Miskadeshes B'milva. Omar Rav Shmami Nomi Rabbi Asi Tlas. I want to derive three halachic principles from the statement of Rav Asi, of Rav and his interpretation of the Mishnah. Number one, Shmami Nekadosh Milva and Mekudeshes. That we saw clearly. And that's why she's not Mekudesh with the Rishona, because that's only a milva. Number two, right? Just 1 second. He adds a note here. Okay. He says here, Hutzach Hamida she'ena mekudeshes elam kein yesh b'tamra achrona shir shavapruta, because the Rishona is only a milva. And that is because it only becomes Keser Kiddushin at the end, at the Gemara of the Kiddushin. Shema Mina number two. Hamakadosh b'milva upruta daita pruta. This is a pretty revolutionary idea. A man is Makadosh an Isha by being mochel a chov that she owes him. And in addition, he gives her a pruta. So there was mechilas chov and the nesina of a pruta. And it's valid Kiddushin, even though Makadosh b'milva ain't a mekudeshes, but nevertheless, when he adds a pruta biyada, she's mekudeshes. How do we see this in Rabbi Ami? Because he's interpreting the Mishnah that he's Makadosh an Isha with many, many tamros, and he wants to be Makadosh with all the tamros kachas, bazu, without separating them into separate Masechet Kiddushin. And she ate already some of the tamros, and therefore she owes him that chov. It's a milva, and he's mochel chov, fine. But now he gets to the final tamra, and lo and behold, it's worth a pruta. And she can become a kudeshes with that last tamra that's worth a pruta, even though he was mochel milva on the previous tamras that she ate. But nevertheless, he gave her not only the mechilas milva for the first tamras that she ate, but also a live, healthy, complete tamra. And makadosh b'milva ubepruta mikudeshes. Now we turn to Daf Mem Vav Mem Beis to see the third nafkamina for Rabbi Ami.